Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we've returned to the subject of UGreen and the UGreen iDX6011 Pro, or their new AI NAS. Now, I know a lot of users are not going to be looking at this device for its AI capabilities. They're looking at the price point for the early backing. They're looking at the leaps and strides that UGreen have made in the world of NAS in the last couple of years, and they've looked at the hardware spec and gone, do you know what, bang, I'll have it. But some of you will specifically be looking at this device as a local AI appliance. You want to take advantage of the time efficiencies with your data, perhaps decades of data, and want to use those AI assistant benefits on data locally. And that's what today's video is about. This is a product that's still going through crowdfunding. Do keep in mind that means that unlike traditional retail, you're not guaranteed a product at the end. Keep that in mind. We are talking about crowdfunding. Nevertheless, UGreen did deliver on their original 2024 crowdfunding campaign, and I don't really have too much doubt that they're going to roll out on this, but do keep that in mind. But with that, it is also worth highlighting, I'm going to put the TLDR out there early doors, looking at my notes. Number one, this AI doesn't feel finished. This local AI deployment, I've dealt with several in the last 12 or to 18 months. This one doesn't feel finished yet. They've put their hands up and said as much, and it is still currently going through development and optimization. But I will say right now, at the time of recording, it doesn't feel finished. I will also add pretty much all of the services are local. Now, I say pretty much because some of them have an option to allow online access. Now, that isn't relaying information to a specific online AI platform, although that is available. You can connect to things like OpenAI or ChatGPT if you have an existing subscription. But predominantly what that means is, with a lot of the AI services, you can choose to only use online assets, or you can choose to use online resources, aka just access the internet for more information. Now, you can turn that off, and predominantly it is worth highlighting that the majority of the features have it off by default. Alongside that, the AI services are off by default anyway. When you get the device for the very first time, we'll talk about it more later on, you have one-click installations of AI LLMs, and I mean that. You don't have to subscribe to something, you don't have to enter any information. It is literally click and download. But crucially, it's off by default and the model isn't there. So you're still going to need internet services, but also if you don't want to engage with the AI stuff, it is not included. Also, the level of access it has to your data, you do have some configuration and control, but I will highlight, and this is going to be very counter and possibly even quite controversial, I wish the AI had more access. They've been incredibly secure about it, but sometimes when I was asking the system to give me answers to my queries based on my data, sometimes it just wouldn't give me the answer because it didn't have the access. And at the time of recording, the scaling of access to my data isn't quite there. They've gone pretty tight in the level of NAS access that's there. I just wish I could customize it to certain directories or certain users. I've spoke to the brand about this. This is something they're investigating, but right now at the time of recording, that is not included. Finally, for those looking at this system right now at the time of recording, the AI system and using the Ulia AI integration they have gone for, it is not creating stuff. It doesn't allow for generative photos or video, anything like that, which is a shame, I think, for some users. And some of us have been looking at more powerful GPU-equipped systems and wondered if that's possible. This is not there. This is not allowing for generative. It allows for generative text and scouring through your information and learn and using large language models to kind of communicate back and forth, but it won't allow for generating videos. So do keep that in mind here. So straight away, let's talk about that control and security. That comes into two main forms, I might add. Straight away, you've got the AI console. This is where you choose the model you're going to install and run. As you can see there, you've got the token speed there already listed, the amount of memory that is required and how much is going to potentially utilize. Also, it breaks down into different kind of AI models for different tasks, be it multimedia or multimodal. Again, I'm not that familiar with AI. I don't know if that's a typo or if that's a thing. I apologize. Let me know in the comments if it is. Speech recognition model as well. We'll come into lots of these later on, but these are the individual models that are downloaded on one click. Those, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but anyone that's ever used photo recognition, on a UGreen NAS will know, if you go into the settings, you've actually got a lot of options there in terms of intelligent AI modeling there to allow for different kinds of recognition. This is very much like that, but on a larger system scale. And we'll come back to the photography stuff later on. But alongside that, we can also look at beyond the control, you've got things like the authorization, what it can and cannot do. And at the moment, I've enabled speech to text alongside utilization of the large language model. A lot of that will come in, will be a lot more, by the way, visually on the voice memo stuff there. Again, with the local model, you can choose which elements you want to utilize, whether you want to disable some of them. But this is where I would like to see a lot more control. I'd like to be able to see, for example, with the QWEN3 model, I'd like to be able to say it can most certainly access these areas and not these areas, because sometimes it felt like it just didn't have access to the data I wanted it to access. Now, smart controls, this is an element that, although I'm impressed by, and we can talk about things like ZLabs in a video coming soon, I wish there was more here in terms of system control, because one of the main benefits, alongside AI assistance on utilising your own data on a NAS that LLMs can utilise, I like the idea that a user will be able to complete complex multi-stage tasks via a verbal human command or a text human command there. This is where that would come in. So if I want to be able to create a temporary guest user, or I want to restrict certain connections, or ascertain information from logs on the system, this is where I would want it to be, to give a command to my device in human speech and non-techie language, and it action it. And although some of them are there aren't a lot of them. And I do hope to see this evolve more as their campaign and development continues. Finally, cloud models, as mentioned, you can connect cloud models, in this case OpenAPI, use your API key, and it'll allow you to use those off-site AI resources there. But again, kind of defeats the object of this whole system there. Now, going into the Ulia AI itself, before we can go into that, we can go into the bottom and check the settings with this one because of its general settings, because there's a little bit more customization to play with. So, for example, residency time when it comes to how long it holds on to data, how long it holds on to memories. And you can set that, although I think most users, except for confidentiality reasons, are going to want to go long term. But keep in mind, you're going to be allocating a lot of memory and potentially storage space to that. Now, when it comes to the cloud model, as you can see, when the cloud model is enabled, your chat and uploaded document knowledge-based content will be transmitted to third-party cloud services for analysis. That is the same as when you set up any other NAS, when it says we would like to have analytical data to improve our service. I would turn it off, and it is off by default. But again, in case you're wondering what that is. Online search, as you can see, you can choose whether you want to use online resources, and when you do, which ones it use are, customizable to your own needs. And again, it is utilizing brief numbers, or you can go all the way up to 20 results to then further butter your AI-assisted search results on this. But again, not for everyone, particularly those looking at local AI deployment. And GPU acceleration, we've already kind of talked about this in the review, if that's already live. The GPU allows you via the Oculink port to use an external GPU card or even a PCIe mounted one, and we used an Ustar Oculink dock, and it connected and saw the card just like that. And that's really it in terms of configuration and control. And that brings us now into the AI assisted services. Now, we are going to explore Ulia a little bit, but before we do that, I want to talk about the voice memo feature, because this voice memo feature is interesting. I think it should have been integrated into Ulia itself, and I think a lot of users aren't even going to bother with it because they'll just hear voice memo like notepad or notes, and it's more than that. Now, for example, right now, let's add a recording. So if I start a recording right now, as I'm speaking, the system is now utilizing a microphone, or I say the system, there is a client application I'm running on the Windows system that is now recording from the local mic. I gave it permission in advance. And then from there, it is maintaining a recording. This can go on for a great deal of time, or it can be very, very short. So if I click finish there, what's going to happen with this new recording is it's going to allow me to choose how to use the AI on this recording. So for example, I select the language that it is in, and I can say what kind of thing it is. So for example, I'm going to say it's a report, and I'm going to ask it to generate a report based on the audio file it's just received. Now, most users are going to hear that and go, what is the sodding point? And you've genuinely got a very fine point there, because I don't imagine a lot of users are going to use that on the fly. What is useful is when you want to upload and import a recording from the NAS or locally. So in advance, while it does that other one, as you can see here, this was a transcript from when I compared two different NAS devices on a video about 2.5 years ago. Now, this basically broke down and ripped my entire script that I said transcribed from that video. It can then also generate a summary of what I did there. So this will give us the bullet points of that comparison, the pros, the cons, the strengths, the weaknesses, all broken down. But more importantly, it's the mind map there that will allow you to kind of break down how and where the discussion broke down and the splintering points throughout. Now, that is going to be useful to those that have got years and years of data that want to be able to analyze individual files, and particularly long-running recordings. I don't quite like that it's limited predominantly to to audio and not video. And I have seen other AI NAS devices, again, like that ZLabs one that we're going to be comparing against, that do the same as this, but with video files. But as long as they're heading in that direction, because ZLabs have already had a 1.5 years ahead of this, so I would hope their development will be better, but it'll be interesting to see where UGreen goes with this, because I quite like this feature. And again, you can set it, you can enable and disable certain kinds of access and control. And if we go back to that microphone recording there, again, it's too short for a summary. I imagine the mind map is too short, but it's quite nice to have this feature and facility there. And the same goes if you do create a transcript like I did there, you can translate it on the fly. Again, this is only using local, not using online resources there, something we'll talk about in a moment. But overall, really happy with what we're seeing there. And again, you can export that information. Now, onto Ulia. Ulia is their chatbot. It is their portal to the AI services. These are broken down predominantly into 4 major areas. There is a general chat. So if I go to the general chat, we can choose whether we want to use online resources, as discussed earlier, or only offline resources. I've already done a bunch of them here, but let's go with what is available to us using the system. So I'm going to ask, I've already asked about NAS compares. What is a NAS device? So we're going to go with that, and this will now use my local information as well as the information that is baked into the LLM to answer that question. Now, keep in mind, I've uploaded several years of information into this system. I've uploaded quite a lot into a shared area there, and then a lot of these are recordings from videos that I've done. A lot of these are documents, they are scripts. So there's information available there to build from. Not loads, and definitely some of this is into a general device or management. But for example, if I do exactly the same search, but this time using the online resources and spell device correctly, it will now presumably give a more colourful, a more detailed response. We'll have to wait and see. Or will it be exactly the same? We'll have to wait and see. But as you can see right there, it's pretty much the same thing. I'll be interested to see how much of that is utilising the online research, and I wish there was a way to monitor that, or at least the thinking that we now see in modern versions of things like ChatGPT. I would like to see that visualised on screen. But as you can see, at least in this way, it does give online resources of where that information came from. Whereas, of course, when it came to the local model, it only had the local access. So let's disable that online access there. Now we can change to some of the other services, something we'll talk about later on. We can also upload files. So if we upload a file from the NAS, we'll go for, can we upload a photo? Let's have a look, see what kind of things we can upload there. So we'll go for a JPEG there. This is of a travel router. Let's get that uploaded there. And let's see what it makes of the file that we've just uploaded. Is it going to say what it is? Is it going to explain? Or is it just going to say, I've received a file? Or is it going to be confused? Because one of the other things I've noticed in the early development of this AI NAS and this LLM that they're utilizing here is it does hang from time to time. So you can see there, an individual holds a white travel router with a small blue screen displaying. So if we go for it, that is a photo of a travel router that I held on a plane. Now it's worked out a travel router, but it's got the word travel router on it. It has at the very least ascertained what exactly I have uploaded to it. Now that could be quite good, but what I would like is a system to crawl all of my data, even if it takes hours, days, weeks, whatever, and then have that information ready. It's useful to be able to upload data to this and tell it to analyze it and give me results. Same thing goes with like documents, and we'll talk about it in a moment. but I wish it already pre-crawled, or at the very least I could choose this directory for it to rip and crawl from in advance, so when I was doing intelligent searches, when I was looking for travel router information, then it perhaps would find it. So for example, if I go into the photo area, so we'll come back to later on, that photo is in there. There's the travel router. So let's search for the word travel router. Let's see if it can find it. Keep in mind, some of my files are already pre-named by me in advance, and it's doing a quick search there in the background, and it has found it. It's found, interestingly, a video of the travel router. So this was when I was on the plane getting ready to do a video about utilizing that travel router on the go. Now, presumably, it's got that from the file name. So if we come out of it there, we can see that it has got it there in the file name. So again, not prepared to give a huge amount of credit and kudos at this time for that, but at the very least, it is still indexing that information there in the background, but in a way that most modern NASs already kind of provide as it is. Now, the chat, as we go back and forth, it is useful. I am wondering, for example, how deep I can go. So, for example, if you look for something more current, so what is the weather in the UK? Obviously, right now, it doesn't have internet service access, so presumably, no way it can give us an answer to that query. But I'd be interested to see how it handles that query there. Now, I feel like it could be snappier. It's not. I definitely think there's optimization needed here, and I do think this is where that crawling, that pre-scraping is really useful. That's somewhere where the ZLabs device, that Ultra, the D6 still in review, that would have crawled this information in advance. It kind of rips as much as it can and then pulls from that, and then later on you can do a deeper search, much like this is doing. It's not bad, but I do think it needs further optimization and the option to at least pre-crawl and pre-rip some of that in the background. Now, the knowledge base is something I've not really wrapped my head around at the moment, and it feels like somewhere where at the moment you can see the exclusive brain. So if I go into here and say, give me examples of UGreen NAS systems, I'll be interested to see what this can do, because right now it isn't hugely explained what the knowledge base is and isn't, and what it has and what it hasn't got access to. Remember, I think a lot of users, as you can see, it says right now UGreen does not offer NAS systems. Now that might be that there isn't sufficient data on this system to indicate it, and you can't enable an online search in a knowledge base. So it's garnering this information, but whether it is that the internal LLM's database hasn't really got the answer to it, or hasn't found a relevant, suitable answer within my data, it would be interesting to see whether right now this knowledge base option is something they're still working on, because the knowledge base right now doesn't feel complete to me. What I like about the knowledge base, if we create a new knowledge base there, we'll call this one new test. What I want from a knowledge base is, once again, to be able to direct it towards a directory on my NAS, rather than uploading an individual file for that matter. I would like to be able to direct it to an area of my NAS, give it some time to crawl, give it some time to scrape, and then from there, from that knowledge base, ask it questions directly about that specific knowledge base, that specific directory, something that isn't here. And I know that would be quite aggressive in terms of hardware resource utilization, but we're not talking generative. We're talking about a CPU with a substantial NPU utilization there. It's nice to be able to utilize it. So, for example, document analysis there, something we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But still, I do think the knowledge base is going to be useful. I just don't think it's there yet. And it's another example that you can see we can do. Let's go for a file here. Let's go for a folder. Let's select one right now. Let's go for, do you know what, we're in the U's. Do we have a UGreen in here? We've got UGreen NAS 1 year later. And how many files can we select? All of those. We're going to upload those 27 files into this database. So as those files are uploading, presumably within this new test database, that will allow me to begin asking questions about these files. Now, the idea that I can do this, ad hoc here, I wish I could just point at directories, as sorry to be repetitious, something I've already said there. But I do think this is something that's going to have to get better later, because at the very least, right now the knowledge base, it works, but it's working in the wrong direction for me. Now, if we go into the summary area, the summary, much like we saw with the audio file there, this is allowing us to summarize data. As you can see, this is for document, text, and PDF. So for example, from the NAS, let's select this other world computing here. So this is a press release, I think, from OWC. So I'm going to say, what is this file about? So from here, and now this is from the NAS, I'm checking what this document is, content-wise, to save me having to read through the damn thing, what's included in it. As you can see, it knows that it's a press release regarding a docking station from OWC. Useful stuff, and again, we could have used online searches if we chose to, at least while it's running. I don't think that's available, at least now. But at the very least, this is a great feature and facility. Once again, I just wish it was something I could action, much like offline transcoding, in advance, rather than slowly entering files one by one. And also, again, you can probably see a little bit more optimization, but I'm sure that is something they're going to be working on when they get more and more feedback on this device in development. Great feature, useful to have, and for those that are interested in analyzing local files, great. But the option to pre-parse, to pre-scrape is hugely necessary here. Finally, we have smart commands. Now, smart commands, as mentioned earlier on, are the things that I think are going to be universally, for NAS novices, the most useful. And again, it's something they're slowly edging into, but they're not quite there yet for me, at least in terms of it making a major selling point on this system right now. Now, what these are commands in human language to the NAS. So, for example, if I say to the NAS, increase the fan speed, nice and simple, it will then utilize that command and then increase the fan speed, as you can see there, and it is now set the fans to a higher cooling state. Now, if I wanted to reboot the system, I'm not going to do that right now, but that is a command I could ask the system to do. What I want is, for example, to say, how many users are accessing the system right now? Commands like that, I want to be able to get real-time answers and real-time information from this system on the go. So for example, I want to know how many photos are on the system, how much data is remaining on the system, create a new shared folder, create a new guest account, those kind of things, set up a new scheduled task. When I can see those features and services integrated, then I would call this a major selling feature. And at the moment, it feels like a nice, quirky idea, which isn't quite being actioned. As you can see, it hasn't really actioned this AI request, this LLM-based request. So as you can see, providing knowledge does not contain information about fan speed, and it's trying to keep a contextual answer based on what I've said before, and I've asked it a completely different question. So again, optimization is required there. Now, if you go back into the smart commands section, you can see examples of commands that you can currently make on there. It lists some of them, and again, play films, search films. But for example, search films, what I want to be able to know is, for example, let's go for videos about UGreen NAS. So this, for example, would say you've got an archive of television shows for a very long time, and it's Pancake Day, it's Easter, it's Valentine's Day, and you want to be able to pull episodes of television about a certain theme, maybe even Christmas. I like the idea that it would be able to pull that, but is it doing it crawling the video? When I've uploaded these videos, has it scraped the transcript, and then it is using that transcript to pull words like Christmas, Valentine's Day, or is it just using media file name? And judging by every one of these files having UGreen in the title, I'm forced to assume that it is utilizing only the file names, which isn't bad. And at the very least, it's allowing me at one click to play that file. But I will say, I kind of wish that it was scraping that data in the background, something we have seen NAS brands do before with integration of AI. Now, again, I've reached out to UGreen on this, and it is something they are exploring. They want to nail down the fundamentals and then kind of spread their wings into what the other capabilities can be. So hopefully this is a feature that will be integrated down the road. But at the very least, with smart commands, I think it's very important to understand that when it comes to smart commands, it's not about the basic commands. They really have to tackle fundamental stuff. Like if I want to access my logs on the system and I want to export that log, unfortunately I'm not able to utilize those files. If I try to upload them in there and I go ahead, for example, with the export log as a CSV, nothing. If I try to upload it there as an HTML, nothing. That's where I would like to see some of that uploading, some of the access to that data, and ultimately how the system can do a very, very good job in giving real-time information and understanding. Because logs, you know, some of these, 135 entries alone in this one, I think a lot of non-tech users would really love to see that information be either pre-analysed, so like a new option on there that analyses the logs, or even build it into the logs itself to be able to get more real-time information about these things. Because it says, for example, the configuration when the fan was uploading, lots of these different bells and whistles here. I think AI LLM integration could really do a great number on improving the information retained and retrieved from that. I like the knowledge base feature, so again, when we upload those I do like the knowledge base feature, that I can have all of that information and database there in one place, curated, and then ask it questions based on that. But I will say, again, I would rather it was pre-crawled, or I could just point at a directory rather than having to manually upload and connect these. And the same goes for most of these. There seems to be a lot of work that goes towards telling the AI what to do rather than it pre-scraping. And I do think that is something you're going to have to visit to ensure that the option for directories that are going to be pre-scraped for information, be it just basic transcripts and AI photo recognition in advance, needs to be done prior rather than asking me, the end user, to do afterwards. Even if you set times during, say, the middle of the night when it's not being accessed in order to do it. Something that we've seen many, many times in photo recognition. We talked about it before, the albums here. So, for example, with people recognition here, if I select myself here, it hasn't just done photos, it has crawled my face out of these videos. That's understood and known, and it isn't always the thumbnail either. Take this one, for example. When I was setting up for a travel router there, my face isn't in the thumbnail, it just happens to be in the video. So it knows enough to pre-scrape that prior to. I just need to see that level of integration in the AI. It's good, it is good, genuinely good, but I do think it is still early days. I do think it needs more time in the oven. And the feature set, it's also worth touching on that the Ulia AI, the LLM service for the AI assistant, is also integrated directly into the file folder manager. So for example here, we've got a bunch of docs here, some of which we've already looked at. If we go for a document I've not really scanned yet, let's go for this GLI net document here. This is when I got specifications on a product. And as you can see, there's a native right click there that allows me to translate the doc or summarize it. Just before we do so, if we open that document up, we can see that this is effectively a breakdown of specifications for that product when I reached out to the brand. Now, if we right click that, we wanted to get some summarization of that, we're able to see here it's summarizing that doc. It's not instantaneous, it needs the extra few seconds to get the job done, but it summarizes that document and will slowly break down the contents of that doc there, and then you can ask it questions based on that information and that summary. So finding out more about it, what exactly it is, and obviously larger documentation will probably take a little bit longer, and the amount of information you can get back will change. The same goes if we were to go ahead and use Ulia to translate that document. That will translate it, as you can see, and by default it's translating it into Chinese, but there are other options for translation. Currently only English, German and Japanese, alongside traditional / simplified Chinese there. Now, as good as that is, I do want to highlight that again, it is still early days, something I touched on previously. If I right click this PDF, there is the Ulia option there to go ahead and use the LLM to get the job done. However, if I make my way, for example, into files and folders, and for example, let's say I wanted to find out more information about a photo. Here is a JPEG there. Let's scroll past the JPEG there. We right click a JPEG, no contextual option. We're not able to use the OCR directly. And if we open it up, we try to use some of the options here to find out more information. And this would have been a really nice place to have the option to use the OCR to rip it, just like you would with, say, Google searches or even Microsoft Edge. The same goes if I wanted to go into video or audio files. Here is an MKV file here, or even a MP4 file, no option there. But where I really want to see some of this get added, if we go back into the test data here, is if I went ahead and started searching for spreadsheets. Now, a spreadsheet is where I would really love to see this option. Unfortunately, it's not there. So for example, these were specifications for the Beelink ME Pro that was sent to me when I was researching the device and asking the brand to give me more information about the specs. this would have been really useful to be able to use Ulia natively. Now, of course, we've got the the Only Office built into the device, which is all good to be able to open it up, and maybe even Only Office will start integrating local LLM summarisation there perhaps. So I would like to see that integrated here, so I can right click particularly deeper spreadsheets. So for example, it was a payroll document and I needed totals, or I wanted to get some fast information about what a spreadsheet might be. This could be a very useful way to integrate that. As I say, it is still early days, and I've already utilised several different docs throughout the course of my testing of this feature. I just want to see them integrate more, because the building blocks are there, the fundamentals are there. I just want to see it really spread its wings and allow users with quite literally decades of data to be able to utilise the AI LLM assistants to a better utilisation locally without internet services. I want to see comparable to what we've already seen here when it comes to photo recognition, and indeed video recognition for that matter, because what they've done with their photo app is very, very good. We've already talked about how you've got a lot of models to choose from, what it can access and where, and we've also seen, for example, when you go into the tools section, actually creating custom AI models where you can upload 10 photos of something and then create your very own curated AI recognition there. It's lovely stuff. I want to see that in Ulia. I want to see the AI integration on this to be at that level. I didn't expect generative because it doesn't have the GPU power. It's got the NPU power to take advantage of it with AI assistants and LLMs, but it doesn't have the creation power under the bonnet. I just want to see more integration of this AI in terms of pre-request, pre-scraping. I want to see all of that data being scraped down in the background when I upload data or on a schedule, and then later on when I do use Ulia, when I do use memos, when I do use photo or video recognition, I want to see that data being a lot more ready than I'm seeing here. I am happy with what I'm seeing, and as a NAS, at the price point that this pre-early access, backup, Kickstarter, whatever is placed at, is very, very appealing. And I do think they're going to further develop the AI there. I do, because they did so with the photo recognition and all the bones are there. But I do think, one, they need to improve the pre-scraping. They do need to allow for other models, maybe curated, so not access to any, but 2 or 3. And they definitely need to allow scalable access rather than the rather rigid yes-no position they've gone with access internally inside the system. But this has been the AI integration on the UGreen iDX6011 Pro. Let me know what you think in the comments. There is a link to it in the description as well. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you guys think or what you want to see from a system like this, or indeed AI NAS at all, in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.